I'm Captain Tessa Rossi, 32 years old, and I built my career in the Army from the ground up, leading soldiers, earning commendations, and serving at Fort Bragg. For years, I quietly carried the weight for my family, helping with bills, staying close during surgeries, showing up whenever they needed me. But the day my own father laughed at me outside Fort Bragg, calling my service pretend, and my sister joked I was just a janitor in uniform, I made a choice that changed everything. Have you ever been dismissed or humiliated by the very people you sacrificed for? If so, tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I dive into what happened, let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground after being underestimated, hit like and subscribe for more true stories about setting boundaries and reclaiming respect. What happened next might surprise you. I stand outside Fort Bragg in my dress uniform, watching my family pull into the visitors' lot. The Carolina sun beats down on the asphalt, and I can already see my father's face through the windshield, that look he gets when he's about to say something he thinks is funny. My sister Marissa climbs out of the passenger seat, designer sunglasses reflecting the base's chain-link fence. Mom follows, smoothing her blouse, scanning the area like she's visiting a foreign country. This isn't the first time they've come to see where I work, but it might as well be. They've never really looked. Dad approaches first, hands in his pockets, that smirk already forming. "So this is where you pretend to be a soldier," he says, loud enough that a couple of MPs near the gate turn their heads. He laughs, expecting me to join in. I don't. Marissa catches up, glancing at my uniform like it's a costume from a clearance rack. "She's probably just a janitor around here," she adds, inspecting her nails. Mom doesn't say anything, but she doesn't defend me either. She just looks tired, ready to get through this visit and move on to something more interesting. I've been an Army captain for 3 years. Before that, I spent 4 years as a lieutenant, leading soldiers through training rotations and deployment prep. I've briefed colonels, coordinated logistics for multi-unit exercises, and earned commendations that sit in a drawer back in my quarters because there's no one to show them to who would care. But standing here, listening to my father joke about my career in front of strangers, I feel like I'm 12 again, trying to explain why I wanted to join JROTC while he shook his head and changed the channel. We walk toward the base's small cafe, the one near the visitor center where families can grab lunch before tours or ceremonies. Marissa talks about her law firm's latest case, some corporate merger that's keeping her busy. Mom listens intently, asking follow-up questions, nodding with genuine interest. Dad chimes in with praise, calling Marissa sharp, saying she's got a real future. I walk beside them, silent, my boots clicking against the pavement. No one asks about my work. No one asks about the briefing I'm headed to after lunch, or the training exercise I coordinated last week that went so well my CO personally thanked me in front of the platoon. Inside the cafe, we order sandwiches. The conversation continues around me. Marissa mentions her husband, Jonathan, who's supposed to join us later. He's wrapping up some meetings, she says, scrolling through her phone. You know how it is with his schedule. I know Jonathan is a Navy Admiral, decorated and respected. I've never met him, but I've heard enough. Marissa drops his rank into conversations the way other people mention the weather, casually, but always making sure you notice. Dad leans back in his chair, looking around the cafe. You eat here every day? He asks. I nod. It's convenient, I say. He laughs again, that same dismissive sound. Guess it beats cooking, he says. Though I figured the Army would have you doing more. I don't know, obstacle courses or something. Isn't that what soldiers do? Marissa smirks. She probably has people for that, she says. Tessa was never really the physical type. I want to tell her about the last PT test I maxed, or the ruck march I led last month through 12 miles of mud and rain, but I don't. I just take another bite of my sandwich and let it go. I've learned that defending myself only invites more mockery. Mom finally speaks up, but not about me. Marissa, didn't you say Jonathan got recognized by the Secretary of the Navy last year? Marissa lights up, nodding. He did. It was a whole ceremony in Washington. Very formal. Mom sighs, impressed. That must have been something to see. I sit there, invisible, thinking about the ceremony I was part of 2 months ago, where I received a commendation for leading a joint training initiative. There were no family members in attendance. I didn't bother inviting them. I knew they wouldn't come, or worse, they'd come and make jokes about it afterward. The meal drags on. Marissa talks about her vacation plans, some resort in the Bahamas. Dad complains about his back, and Mom suggests a new chiropractor. I check my watch, counting down the minutes until I can excuse myself and get back to work, back to people who see me for what I actually do. When the check comes, Dad glances at me. "You got this?" he asks. I pause, then nod, pulling out my card. He doesn't thank me. He just stands up, stretching, ready to move on to whatever's next. As we walk back outside, I see a group of my soldiers near the motor pool, working on vehicle maintenance. One of them, Sergeant Alvarez, spots me and waves. I wave back, and for a moment, I feel grounded again. These are my people. They trust me. They follow my lead without question because I've earned it. Marissa notices the exchange and raises an eyebrow. "Friends of yours?" she asks. "My team," I say. She doesn't respond, just keeps walking. We reach the parking lot, and I'm about to say goodbye when Marissa's phone buzzes. "Jonathan's here," she says, glancing around. A black sedan pulls up, and a man in a Navy uniform steps out. He's tall, composed, with rows of ribbons on his chest. This is Admiral Jonathan Price, Marissa's husband, the man I've heard about but never met. He walks toward us, and I instinctively straighten my posture. Military habit. He's a superior officer, even if he's family by marriage. Then he sees me. His eyes shift to my uniform, taking in the rank insignia, the unit patch, the name tape. His expression changes, something like recognition, maybe respect. He stops a few feet away, and before Marissa can introduce us, he does something I don't expect. He salutes. Sharp, crisp, proper. "Ma'am," he says. "Captain Rossi." It's an honor. I return the salute, stunned. Behind him, my family stands frozen. Dad's mouth is slightly open. Marissa looks confused. Mom just stares. Jonathan steps forward, extending his hand. "I've heard good things about your work with the training command," he says. "Your CO spoke highly of you at a conference last year." I shake his hand, finding my voice. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate that." He nods, glancing at Marissa. "You didn't tell me your sister was Captain Rossi," he says. Marissa stammers. I didn't think." Jonathan looks back at me. "Well, it's a privilege to meet you." The silence that follows is heavy. My father, who joked about me pretending to be a soldier, says nothing. Marissa, who called me a janitor, shifts her weight, uncomfortable. Mom looks down at her hands. And I stand there, holding on to this moment, this single moment where someone who outranks me, someone my family actually respects, just treated me like I matter. Jonathan asks about my unit, about the training cycles, about base operations. We talk for a few minutes, professional, peer-to-peer. My family watches, quiet, and for the first time in years, they see me. Not as the daughter who chose wrong, not as the sister who didn't go to law school, but as the officer I've become. When Jonathan finally excuses himself to head inside for his meeting, he salutes me again before leaving. I return it, and as he walks away, I turn back to my family. They're still silent, still processing. I don't say anything. I don't need to. I just check my watch and tell them I have to get back to work. Dad nods, subdued. Marissa mumbles something about needing to go too. Mom tries to smile, but it doesn't quite land. I walk away, back toward the base, back toward my life, and I don't look back. Growing up, I was the reliable one. The daughter who didn't cause problems, who did her chores without being asked, who kept her grades steady and her room clean. Marissa was brilliant, everyone said so. She had a quick mind, sharp wit, the kind of presence that filled a room. Teachers loved her. Dad loved her. I was just there. Dependable. Useful. The one who helped Mom with groceries, who remembered to mail birthday cards, who never asked for much, because I learned early that asking meant disappointment. When Marissa got into law school, our house transformed. Dad threw a party, invited relatives, made speeches about how proud he was. Mom cried happy tears, hugging Marissa like she'd won the lottery. I was a senior in high school, still figuring out what I wanted to do, but I knew it wouldn't get the same reaction. I liked structure, discipline, the idea of serving something bigger than myself. I started researching military academies, ROTC programs, enlisted options. When I told Dad, he laughed. Not meanly, but dismissively, like I'd just announced I wanted to be an astronaut. "That's a phase," he said. "You'll change your mind." I didn't. Marissa graduated law school and joined a firm. She bought a condo, started dating men with titles and BMWs, became the success story Dad told at family gatherings. I went to basic training, then officer candidate school, then got my commission. I called home to share the news, and Mom said, "That's nice, honey," before asking if I'd heard about Marissa's promotion. I had heard. Everyone had heard. It was all anyone talked about. I learned not to bring up my achievements. When I made lieutenant, I didn't call home. When I earned my Ranger tab, I mentioned it once at Christmas, and Dad changed the subject to Marissa's latest case. Mom would nod politely when I talked about my work, but her eyes glazed over, like I was describing a hobby she didn't understand. It wasn't malicious. They just didn't see the military as legitimate, not the way law or business was legitimate. To them, I was playing dress-up, wasting time until I figured out what I really wanted to do. But I kept going. I sent money home when Dad needed help with medical bills after his surgery. I didn't have much, but I had enough, and he was my father. He thanked me briefly, then never mentioned it again. When Mom had her own surgery, I deferred a promotion board to stay stateside, close enough to visit on weekends. I sat with her in recovery, made sure she had groceries, drove her to follow-up appointments. Marissa was too busy with work, she said. She'd visit when things calmed down. They never did. I didn't resent Marissa, not exactly. She was good at what she did, and she deserved recognition. But somewhere along the way, I realized our family only had room for one success, and it wasn't going to be me. I could save lives, lead soldiers, earn medals, and it would never matter as much as Marissa's latest courtroom win. So I stopped trying to make them see me. I just kept doing my job, kept showing up, kept being the reliable one. Maybe that's why the betrayal hurt so much. I'd spent years lowering my expectations, accepting scraps of acknowledgement, and they still found a way to humiliate me. After the incident outside Fort Bragg, I sit alone in my quarters, replaying the moment. Dad's laughter. Marissa's smirk. The way they dismiss me in public, in front of strangers, like my uniform was a costume and my career a joke. I've faced disrespect before. Skeptical civilians, bitter veterans who think officers are soft, people who thank me for my service with empty eyes. But this was different. This was my family, the people who were supposed to believe in me, even when no one else did. I think about the soldiers I work with. Sergeant Alvarez, who trusts me to make life-or-death decisions. Lieutenant Kim, who came to me for advice when her marriage fell apart. Specialist Torres, who told me I was the first officer who treated him like a person instead of a number. These people, strangers a few years ago, value me more than my own blood. They see my work, respect my rank, follow my lead because I've earned it. My family sees none of that. To them, I'm still the second daughter, the backup plan, the one who didn't go to law school. The realization settles in slowly, painfully. It wasn't just one incident. It was years of dismissals, tiny cuts that added up to this moment. Every time Dad joked about my pretend career. Every time Mom redirected conversations away from my achievements. Every time Marissa rolled her eyes when I talked about training rotations. They weren't harmless jokes. They were a pattern, a message. You don't matter the way she does. And I let it happen. I absorbed it, made excuses, told myself they just didn't understand military life. But understanding wasn't the issue. Respect was. I sit on the edge of my bunk, uniform still on, and I feel something shift. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. I've spent years trying to prove myself to people who will never be impressed, giving emotional and financial support to a family that takes without gratitude. I've deferred my own growth, my own happiness, chasing approval I'll never receive. And for what? So they can mock me in parking lots? So they can treat my sacrifices like punchlines? I think about Jonathan Salute, The way he addressed me as ma'am, the respect in his voice. He didn't know me, had no reason to treat me that way except that my rank and work demanded it. A stranger showed me more honor in 2 minutes than my family has in a decade. The juxtaposition is stark, undeniable. I've been looking for validation in the wrong place. The people who matter, my soldiers, my commanding officers, my peers, already see me. They don't need convincing. My family's blindness isn't my failure. It's theirs. I decide something that night. I'm done. Done defending myself, done explaining my choices, done bending over backward for people who won't even stand up straight for me. I'm not cutting them off, not making dramatic declarations, but I'm drawing boundaries. Hard ones. No more bailing Dad out financially. No more rearranging my life for Mom's convenience. No more pretending Marissa's condescension is sisterly teasing. I'll be polite, civil, present when necessary. But I won't give them pieces of myself anymore. I've given enough. The phone calls start a few weeks later. Marissa needs money, something about unexpected legal fees for a case that fell through. She calls me like it's assumed, like of course I'll help. I listen to her explanation, her stress, her subtle implication that family helps family. When she finishes, I tell her I can't. She pauses. What do you mean you can't? I keep my voice steady. I mean I don't have extra funds right now. It's not entirely true, but it's not entirely false either. I have savings, but they're mine, earned through deployments and careful budgeting. I'm not lending them to someone who called me a janitor. Marissa pushes. Tessa, I really need this. It's just a loan. I'll pay you back. I've heard that before. I've loaned her money twice, small amounts, and never seen repayment. I'm sure you'll figure it out, I say. You're resourceful. She huffs, frustrated. So the army taught you to abandon family? The accusation stings, but I don't take the bait. The army taught me to manage resources and set priorities, I say. I'm doing both. She hangs up without saying goodbye. Dad calls next, a few days later. He needs help with his taxes, something about forms and deductions. He's always been bad with paperwork, and I've always helped. This time, I tell him to hire an accountant. Why would I pay someone when you can do it? He asks. Because I'm tired, I think. Because you've never once thanked me. Because I'm not your free labor anymore. But I don't say that. I just tell him I'm swamped with work, which is true, and that a professional will do a better job, which is also true. He grumbles, but doesn't argue. He hangs up, and I feel lighter. Mom calls last, her voice careful, probing. Your father mentioned you're too busy to help with his taxes. I confirm. She sighs. Tessa, I know you're working hard, but family comes first. I close my eyes, counting to 5 before responding. I've always put family first, Mom. I sent money when Dad needed surgery. I stayed stateside when you needed help. I've shown up every time you asked. But it's always one way. You don't come to my ceremonies. You don't ask about my work. You barely acknowledge I exist unless you need something. Silence. Then, quietly, that's not fair. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm being harsh. But fair stopped mattering a long time ago. The guilt trips continue, subtle and persistent. Marissa texts, asking if I'm mad at her. Dad mentions casually to relatives that I'm too busy for family these days, painting me as the distant one. Mom sends articles about work-life balance, the implication clear. But I hold firm. I don't engage, don't defend, don't justify. I just maintain my boundaries, polite but unmoved. It's exhausting in a different way, but it's also freeing. For the first time in my life, I'm not bending to their expectations. I'm not the reliable one they can count on to drop everything. I'm just me, standing my ground. My work improves. Without the emotional drain of family drama, I focus better, lead more effectively. My soldiers notice. Lieutenant Kim asks if I'm okay, says I seem lighter. I tell her I'm fine, better than fine. She smiles, doesn't press. At the next briefing, my CO pulls me aside. Rossi, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Your performance this quarter has been outstanding. I thank him, trying not to smile too widely. It feels good, being seen for what I do rather than what I can give. Jonathan sends an email. It's brief, professional, but kind. He mentions meeting me outside Fort Bragg, says he's heard more about my work since then, asks if I'd be interested in collaborating on a joint training initiative between Army and Navy units. I read the email 3 times, stunned. This is the kind of opportunity that advances careers, the kind of recognition I've worked years to earn. I respond immediately, professional and grateful. We set up a call, and, during it, he treats me like a colleague, an equal. He doesn't mention Marissa. He doesn't mention our family connection. He just talks shop, strategy, logistics. It's the best conversation I've had in months. Marissa finds out somehow. She calls, annoyed. You're working with Jonathan? I confirm. Why didn't you tell me? Because you don't care about my work, I think. Because this has nothing to do with you. It just came up, I say. It's a professional collaboration. She makes a sound, half laugh, half scoff. Must be nice, using family connections. I almost laugh. She's spent years leveraging Dad's business contacts, Mom's social network, every family connection she could find. But when I get an opportunity through merit, through someone who respects my work, she calls it favoritism. I don't argue. I just tell her I have to go, and I hang up. The boundaries I've set aren't just about saying no. They're about reclaiming space, energy, time. I start running in the mornings again, something I gave up because I was too drained from managing family drama. I read more, attend workshops, invest in my own growth. My quarters feel less like a hiding place and more like home. I'm not waiting for their approval anymore. I'm not measuring my worth by their standards. I'm building something they can't touch, can't diminish, can't take away. And it feels like breathing for the first time in years. The months pass, and I settle into this new version of myself. The one who doesn't flinch when Dad makes snide comments, who doesn't rush to fix every family problem. My reputation within the military grows. I'm selected to lead a major training exercise, multi-unit, high-profile, the kind of assignment that gets noticed. My CO briefs me personally, tells me this is a big deal, that I've earned the responsibility. I don't call home to share the news. There's no point. The exercise goes flawlessly. 3 units, coordinated operations, real-time problem-solving under pressure. My soldiers perform brilliantly because I've trained them well, trusted them, led by example. At the debrief, a colonel I've never met approaches me. Captain Rossi, that was textbook leadership. Well done. I thank him, and he hands me his card. Keep me updated on your career. I like to track promising officers. I pocket the card, stunned and grateful. A week later, my name appears in the base newsletter. There's a photo from the exercise, me in the field, surrounded by my team. The caption highlights the operation's success, mentions my role. It's a small thing, but it circulates. People I don't know congratulate me in the commissary. Other officers nod in respect during meetings. I'm building a legacy, one successful operation at a time, and it has nothing to do with my family's approval. But they find out anyway. Mom sees the newsletter somehow. Maybe a friend's son is stationed here. Maybe it popped up in a web search. She calls, her voice bright, proud. Tessa, I saw your picture. That's wonderful. I thank her, cautious. Why didn't you tell us? She asks. Because you wouldn't have cared, I think. Because last time I mentioned an achievement, you changed the subject. It didn't seem worth mentioning, I say. She's quiet then. Well, your father will be so proud. I doubt it, but I don't argue. Dad doesn't call. He never does unless he needs something. But Marissa does. Mom told me about the newsletter, she says. That's great, Tessa. Really. Her tone is sincere, or maybe just carefully neutral. Thanks, I say. She hesitates. Jonathan mentioned you might be up for a commendation. Is that true? I hadn't told her. Jonathan must have. It's possible, I say. Nothing confirmed. She makes a sound, something like approval. That's impressive. I want to ask why it's impressive now, why my achievements suddenly matter when they didn't before. But I don't. I just accept the compliment and move on. The transformation isn't dramatic. I don't wake up one day feeling completely different. It's gradual, cumulative, like muscle memory. I stop seeking their validation because I don't need it. I stop defending my choices because they're not up for debate. I stop shrinking myself to fit their expectations because I've outgrown them. I'm confident in ways I wasn't before, not arrogant but assured. I know my worth. I know what I've built. And I know it's real, whether they see it or not. My soldiers notice the change. I'm more decisive, more present. I trust my instincts, make calls without second guessing. Sergeant Alvarez tells me I've been on fire lately, asks what's different. Just focused, I say. He nods, satisfied. Lieutenant Kim pulls me aside after a briefing. Captain, I don't know what clicked for you, but it's working. You're leading like someone who knows exactly who she is. Her words stick with me. That's what this is, knowing exactly who I am, independent of my family's narrative. I receive orders for a new assignment, something bigger, more responsibility. It's a promotion track position, the kind that signals long-term potential. My CO calls me in, tells me I've been recommended by multiple senior officers, that this is a clear path to major. I should be thrilled, and I am, but mostly I'm calm. This is what I've worked for. This is what I deserve. And I've earned it entirely on my own merit. When I call home to tell them, Mom answers. I explain the assignment, the significance, the opportunity. She listens, then says, "That's wonderful, honey. Let me get your father." I wait, and when Dad picks up, I repeat it all. He's quiet for a moment, then says, "So you're staying in the Army?" It's not a question, and there's still that edge, that disbelief that I've chosen this path. "Yes," I say. "I'm career military." He grunts, something like acknowledgement. Well, good for you. It's the closest he's come to approval, and it means almost nothing now. I don't need his validation. I just wanted him to know. Not for him, but for me. To prove to myself that I can share my success without craving his response. Marissa calls later, having heard from Mom. "Big assignment, huh?" she says. "Yeah," I say. "It's a good opportunity." She pauses. "Jonathan said you're making a name for yourself." He's impressed. I'm surprised. He said that. He did. He doesn't impress easily. There's something different in her tone, not quite respect, but maybe the beginning of it. "Thanks for letting me know," I say. We talk a little longer, surface-level stuff, and when we hang up, I realize the dynamic is shifting. Not back to how it was, but forward into something new, something undefined. I'm not naive. I know my family hasn't transformed. They haven't suddenly become supportive, haven't acknowledged the years of dismissal. But cracks are forming, small fissures in their certainty that I've chosen wrong. They're hearing my name from people they respect, seeing evidence they can't ignore. And while it doesn't undo the hurt, it does something else. It proves I was right. About my path, my choices, my worth. I don't need them to admit it. I just need to keep walking forward, building the life I've earned, step by step, salute by salute. The ceremony is scheduled for mid-October. It's not my ceremony, but one of those large base events where families are invited, units are recognized, and senior officers make speeches. My CO suggests I attend since my unit is receiving a commendation for the recent training exercise. "Bring your family if you want," he says. It's open to guests. I hesitate, then agree. I send the invitation to my parents and Marissa, expecting polite declines or excuses about schedules. Instead, they all say yes. I'm suspicious. My family doesn't do military events. They've skipped every ceremony, every promotion, every milestone that mattered. But something has shifted since the newsletter, since Jonathan's comments, since word started spreading that I'm not just pretending to be a soldier. Maybe they're curious. Maybe they want to see what all the fuss is about. Or maybe they just want to be seen at an event where an admiral will be present. I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. I'm not doing this for them. I'm doing it because my unit deserves recognition, and I want to be there for my soldiers. The day arrives, bright and cool, the kind of weather that makes Fort Bragg look almost picturesque. I'm in my dress uniform, standing near the parade ground where the ceremony will take place. My soldiers are lined up, sharp and disciplined, ready to accept the commendation. I'm proud of them, proud of what we've accomplished together. My family arrives early, parking in the visitors' lot. I spot them walking toward the designated seating area, Dad in a sport coat, Mom in a dress, Marissa in something expensive and tailored. I wave, and they wave back, but the vibe is off. They're looking around, taking in the uniforms, the flags, the formality. Dad mutters something to Mom, and she shushes him. Marissa is on her phone, texting someone. Probably Jonathan. He's supposed to join us later, some meeting running long. I don't join them yet. I have duties, responsibilities. I tell them I'll catch up after the ceremony starts, and they nod, settling into their seats near the back. The ceremony begins with the national anthem, then speeches from senior officers. My CO takes the podium, talks about the training exercise, the coordination, the professionalism displayed. He calls my unit forward, and we march to the front, standing at attention while he reads the commendation. It's formal, stiff, but it matters. This is recognition for real work, real accomplishment. My soldiers hold their composure, but I can see the pride in their eyes. When we're dismissed, they grin, shaking hands, congratulating each other. I stay with them, soaking in the moment. I glance toward my family. They're watching, but I can't read their expressions from this distance. They're just faces in a crowd, and for once, that doesn't bother me. I'm not performing for them. I'm here for my people, my unit, my career. When the ceremony moves to the reception area, I finally walk over to them. Hey, I say. Thanks for coming. Dad nods, hands in his pockets. It was nice, he says, non-committal. Mom smiles. You looked very professional up there. Marissa glances up from her phone. When's Jonathan getting here? I shrug. Not sure. He said he'd text when he's close. We stand there, awkward, with nothing much to say. Then I see him. Admiral Jonathan Price, walking across the lot in his Navy dress uniform, ribbons gleaming, posture perfect. He's impossible to miss, and heads turn as he approaches. Marissa waves, but he's not looking at her. He's looking at me. My family notices, their attention shifting, curious. Jonathan stops a few feet away, and then he does it again. He salutes. Ma'am, he says. Captain Rossi. Good to see you again. I return the salute, professional, controlled. Admiral Price. Thank you for coming. He steps forward, extending his hand. I heard about the commendation. Well deserved. We shake hands, and he turns to my family, nodding politely. You must be very proud. Dad stammers something incoherent. Mom smiles, but it's tight, uncertain. Marissa just stares. Jonathan looks back at me. I've been following your work since we met. Your CO speaks very highly of you. I'm hoping we can finalize that joint training initiative soon. I nod. I've been looking forward to it, sir. He glances at his watch. I need to check in with some colleagues, but let's catch up before I leave. He salutes again, and I return it. Then he walks away, leaving my family in stunned silence. Dad is the first to speak. He saluted you. It's not a question, but it sounds like disbelief. I nod. He's Navy. I'm Army. Different branches, but same military courtesy. Dad looks at Mom, then back at me. He called you ma'am. That's my rank, I say. Captain. He's an admiral, so technically he outranks me, but protocol is protocol. Marissa is still staring after Jonathan. He said your CO speaks highly of you. I nod. We work well together. She turns to me, and for the first time, I see something close to respect. He doesn't compliment people lightly. I shrug. I do my job. But inside, I'm holding on to this moment, this vision to watch them realize they were wrong. The ceremony ends, and the crowd disperses. My soldiers head to the barracks, chattering and laughing, riding the high of recognition. I linger near the parade ground, watching families take photos, officers shake hands, the formal event dissolving into something more relaxed. My family is still near the seating area, talking among themselves. I see Dad gesturing, Mom nodding, Marissa with her arms crossed. They look uncomfortable, like they've been caught off guard and don't know how to recover. I walk over, curious despite myself. Everything okay? I ask. Mom smiles, but it's strained. We were just talking about how impressive the ceremony was. Dad clears his throat. That Admiral, Jonathan. He really respects you. It's an observation, not quite an apology, but closer than anything he's offered before. I nod. He's a good officer. We're collaborating on a project. Marissa looks at me, something unreadable in her expression. You didn't tell me it was that serious. I thought it was just preliminary. It's moving forward, I say. We've been coordinating for a few weeks now. She's quiet, processing. Then, that's a big deal, Tessa. I nod. It is. We stand there, the weight of years hanging between us. I'm not expecting an apology. I'm not sure they're even capable of giving one. But there's a shift, a subtle acknowledgement that maybe they misjudged me. Dad finally speaks. You've done well for yourself. It's not much, but coming from him, it's something. Thanks, I say. He nods, awkward, then changes the subject. How long are you stationed here? I tell him my assignment details, the timeline, the possibilities. He listens, actually listens, and it's strange. This is what I wanted years ago: attention, interest, validation. Now that I have it, it feels hollow. Too late, maybe? Or just unnecessary. Mom suggests lunch, and we go to a restaurant off base. The meal is quieter than usual. No one mocks my uniform, no one dismisses my work. Marissa asks about the joint training initiative, and I explain the logistics, the goals, the challenges. She listens, nodding, engaged. Dad asks about my soldiers, the ones who received the commendation. I tell him about Sergeant Alvarez, Lieutenant Kim, Specialist Torres. He seems genuinely interested, or at least he's trying to seem that way. It's not a transformation. They haven't suddenly become supportive, haven't erased years of dismissal with one respectful lunch. But it's different. The dynamic has shifted, and I can feel it. They're cautious now, careful not to overstep, aware that I'm not the same person who used to absorb their criticism without pushing back. I've drawn boundaries, and they're learning to respect them, whether they want to or not. After lunch, we walk back to the parking lot. Marissa pulls me aside while Mom and Dad head to their car. Tessa, she says, and there's something in her voice I haven't heard before. Uncertainty, maybe. I know things have been tense between us. I wait, not making this easy for her. She sighs. Jonathan said something to me after we met you outside the base that first time. He said I should be more careful about how I talk about your work. That what you do matters. I nod slowly. It does matter. She looks down, then back at me. I didn't get it. I still don't, not completely. But I'm trying to. It's not an apology, not exactly. But it's acknowledgement, and maybe that's all I'm going to get. Okay, I say. She nods, relieved, and we rejoin our parents. They drive away, and I stand in the parking lot, watching their car disappear down the road. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel vindicated, not in the way I thought I would. I just feel calm, like something that's been tight in my chest for years has finally loosened. They saw me today. Really saw me. An admiral saluted me, called my work impressive, treated me like a peer. And they couldn't dismiss that. They couldn't joke it away or minimize it. They had to sit with the reality that I've built something real, something respectable, something that matters. I head back to my quarters, change out of my dress uniform, and sit on my bunk. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Jonathan. Good seeing you today. Let's schedule a call next week to finalize the training initiative details. Your unit's performance was impressive. I text back, confirming, professional. Then another message comes through, this one from Marissa. Thanks for inviting us today. It meant something. I stare at the text for a long moment, then reply. You're welcome. It's simple, neutral, but it's honest. Over the next few weeks, things settle into a new normal. My family doesn't suddenly become perfect. Dad still makes occasional comments that sting. Mom still pivots conversations away from topics she doesn't understand. But they're trying in their own limited way. They ask about my work now, even if they don't fully grasp it. They mention my name when talking to relatives, not with the same pride they show for Marissa, but with something closer to acknowledgement. It's not enough to undo the past, but it's something. Marissa and I talk more, though our conversations are still surface level. She tells me about her cases, and I tell her about my operations. We're not close, probably never will be, but we're civil. She doesn't mock my career anymore. Once, she even mentions me to a colleague, says her sister is an army captain. It's a small thing, but it matters. She's not ashamed of me anymore, or at least she's not vocal about it. I continue building my career, focusing on what I can control. The joint training initiative with Jonathan moves forward, and it's challenging but rewarding. Working with Navy personnel, coordinating different protocols, aligning objectives, it's the kind of work that sharpens my skills and expands my network. Jonathan treats me with consistent respect, and I realize this is what professional relationships should look like. Mutual regard, clear communication, recognition of competence. It's so different from my family dynamic that it almost feels foreign. My CO pulls me aside one day, tells me I'm being considered for early promotion. "You've got the performance record, the leadership ability, and the recommendations," he says. "If you keep this trajectory, you're looking at major within 2 years." I thank him, trying to stay composed, but inside I'm soaring. This is what I've worked for. This is the validation that matters, not from my family, but from the institution I serve, the peers I respect, the subordinates I lead. I think about calling home to share the news, then decide against it. Not out of spite, but because it doesn't feel necessary anymore. My achievements don't need their approval to be real. They exist independently, validated by the people who understand them. If my family finds out, fine. If they don't, that's fine too. I'm not measuring my worth by their reactions anymore. But Mom calls a few days later, asking how I'm doing. I mention the potential promotion casually, and she pauses. "That's wonderful, Tessa." "Really?" There's warmth in her voice, genuine this time. "Your father will want to hear about this." She puts him on, and he congratulates me, awkward but sincere. "You've worked hard," he says. "I'm proud of you." The words catch me off guard. I've waited years to hear them, and now that I have, they feel strange. Important, but not essential. "Thanks, Dad," I say, and I mean it. But I don't need it the way I once did. A year passes. I make major, just as my CO predicted. The promotion ceremony is small, attended by my unit and a few senior officers. I don't invite my family. Not out of anger, but because this moment is mine. I want to experience it without the weight of their judgment, without wondering if they'll minimize it or make jokes afterward. My soldiers are there, proud and supportive. Lieutenant Kim pins on my new rank, grinning. "Congratulations, ma'am. You earned this." I thank her and we take photos, and I feel complete in a way I never have at family gatherings. I call home afterward to let them know. Mom cries, happy tears this time. Dad says he wishes he could have been there, and I tell him it's okay, that there will be other ceremonies. Marissa texts congratulations, adds that Jonathan says I'm one of the most competent officers he's worked with. I smile at that, saving the message. It's not about needing Jonathan's approval, it's about knowing my work speaks for itself, loud enough that even my family can't ignore it. The Joint Training Initiative wraps up successfully, and Jonathan writes a commendation letter that goes in my file. My CO tells me it'll help with future assignments, that doors are opening. I'm offered a position at a command school, teaching leadership and tactics to incoming officers. It's prestigious, competitive, the kind of role that cements a career. I accept immediately. My family learns about it through the grapevine, some relative who saw an announcement online. Mom calls, excited. Why didn't you tell us? I'm honest. I wanted to make sure it was official before sharing. She accepts the explanation, and we talk about logistics, timelines. She offers to visit, to see the new base. I'm surprised, but I say yes. Maybe they've changed. Or maybe I've changed, and now I can handle their presence without needing their validation. The visit happens a few months later. They're more careful this time, more respectful. Dad asks intelligent questions about my teaching role. Marissa seems genuinely interested in the curriculum I'm developing. Mom takes photos, not for appearances, but because she seems actually proud. It's surreal, this version of my family that treats me like my career matters. I don't trust it completely, old wounds don't heal that quickly, but I appreciate the effort. We have dinner on base, and one of my former soldiers, now a lieutenant himself, stops by our table. Major Rossi, he says, saluting. Good to see you, ma'am. I return the salute, introduce him to my family. He tells them about serving under me, how I taught him leadership fundamentals he still uses. Your daughter is one of the best officers I've served with, he says. My family listens, and I see something in their faces, realization maybe. That this is real. That people I've led respect me deeply. That my career isn't a phase or pretend. It's a legacy. After he leaves, Dad is quiet. Then, he meant that. I nod. They usually do. He looks at me, something like regret in his eyes. We didn't see it. What you were building. I shrug, keeping my voice even. You saw what you wanted to see. He doesn't argue. Mom reaches across the table, squeezes my hand. We're seeing it now, she says. It's not an apology for the years of dismissal, the jokes, the humiliation. But it's acknowledgement. And maybe that's enough. Not to forget, but to move forward. Marissa is the last to speak. I'm sorry, she says quietly. For how I talked about you. For not understanding. I look at her, seeing sincerity for the first time in years. Thank you, I say. She nods, and we leave it there. No grand reconciliation, no dramatic forgiveness. Just two sisters trying to rebuild something that was broken, knowing it'll never be what it could have been, but maybe it can be something new. The visit ends, and they drive away. I stand outside my quarters, watching the sunset, thinking about how far I've come. Not just in rank or assignments, but in knowing who I am. I don't need my family's approval anymore. I've built a life, a career, a reputation that stands on its own. But having their acknowledgement, their respect, it's a nice addition. Not essential, but nice. 2 years later, I'm standing outside Fort Bragg again. Full circle. I'm here for a conference, senior officers from multiple branches gathering to discuss joint operations and future training protocols. I'm one of the presenters, and my session is well attended, well received. Afterward, Jonathan finds me in the corridor. Excellent presentation, Major, he says. We've worked together multiple times since that first initiative, and he's become a colleague I respect and trust. Thank you, sir, I say. He smiles. You've come a long way since we first met. I think back to that day, my family mocking me in the parking lot, his unexpected salute. I agree. He tells me he's recommending me for a role on a joint task force, something high-profile and challenging. You're ready for it, he says. I thank him, and we shake hands before he heads to his next meeting. I stand there for a moment, taking it in. This is my life now. Respected, recognized, building something that matters. The girl who was dismissed by her family is gone. In her place is an officer who's earned every salute, every commendation, every opportunity. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Marissa. Saw your name in a military journal. Impressive work, sis. I smile, texting back a thanks. We're not best friends. We probably never will be. But we've found a way to coexist, to acknowledge each other's accomplishments without competition or dismissal. It's not perfect, but it's progress. I walk outside, toward the same parking lot where my family once humiliated me. The memory is still there, but it doesn't sting the way it used to. It's just a moment in time, a catalyst that pushed me to set boundaries and claim my worth. I think about that younger version of myself, standing here in uniform, absorbing their mockery, feeling small. I wish I could tell her it gets better. That she'll build something extraordinary. That respect finds you when you've earned it, and validation from the right people matters more than approval from the wrong ones. A group of junior officers walks past, and one of them recognizes me. Major Rossi, she says, stopping. I attended your lecture last year on tactical leadership. It changed how I approach my platoon. I thank her, and we talk briefly about her experiences, her challenges. She's eager, smart, reminds me of myself years ago. When she leaves, I feel that familiar sense of purpose. This is why I do this work. Not for my family's approval, not for recognition, but because it matters. Because I can shape the next generation of leaders, because I can serve something bigger than myself. I get in my car, ready to head back to my current post. As I drive past the base gates, I glance in the rearview mirror. Fort Bragg fades behind me, but the memory of what happened here remains. Not as a wound, but as a reminder. I was dismissed, humiliated, mocked by the people who should have believed in me most. And I survived it. More than survived, I thrived. I built a career on my own merit, earned respect from people who matter, and learned that my worth isn't determined by my family's perception. The road ahead is clear, and I drive forward, confident and calm. I don't know what the future holds, more promotions, new assignments, challenges I haven't faced yet. But I know I'm ready. I've been ready for a long time. I just needed to stop waiting for permission to believe in myself. The moment an admiral saluted me in front of my skeptical family wasn't when I became worthy. It was just when they finally saw what had been there all along. I think about the young officers I'll mentor, the operations I'll lead, the legacy I'm building. It's not defined by one dramatic moment or one person's validation. It's defined by years of consistent work, hard choices, and refusing to shrink myself to fit someone else's narrative. My family may never fully understand what I do or why it matters. But that's okay. I understand. My soldiers understand. My peers understand. And that's enough. The sun sets behind me as I drive, casting long shadows across the highway. I'm not running from anything anymore. I'm not chasing approval I'll never get. I'm just moving forward, one mission at a time, one day at a time. Building a life I'm proud of, surrounded by people who see me clearly. The girl who stood outside Fort Bragg, absorbing her family's mockery, would be proud of who I've become. Not because I proved them wrong, but because I proved myself right. And maybe that's the real victory. Not the salute from an admiral, not the shocked silence of my family, not even the promotions and commendations. The real victory is knowing, deep in my bones, that I made the right choice. That I followed a path that fit who I am, not who they wanted me to be. That I built something real, something lasting, something that matters. And no one can take that away from me. Not with jokes, not with dismissal, not with years of conditional love. I drive into the evening, toward whatever comes next, and I'm ready. I've always been ready. I just needed to believe it myself. And now I do. The task force assignment Jonathan recommended comes through 6 months later. It's everything he promised, challenging, high profile, the kind of role that shapes policy and strategy at the highest levels. I'm one of 3 Army representatives, working alongside Navy, Air Force, and Marine officers. We're developing new joint operational frameworks, and the work is intense but exhilarating. This is where I belong, at this level, contributing to something larger than any single branch or unit. My family knows about the assignment, but I don't share details. It's classified work, but beyond that, I've learned to keep my professional life separate from my family life. They're proud in their own way, but I don't need their pride to fuel me anymore. I'm driven by the work itself, by the challenge, by the knowledge that what I'm doing will impact how our military operates for years to come. Marissa calls one evening, and we talk about our lives. She's made partner at her firm, a milestone she's worked toward for years. I congratulate her, genuinely happy for her success. She asks about my work, and I give her the unclassified version. We're both thriving, both building careers we're proud of. The difference is, I'm no longer in her shadow. I've stepped into my own light, and there's room for both of us to shine. Dad's health declines, something age-related but manageable. I visit when I can, balancing my duties with family obligations. He's softer now, less quick to judge, more willing to listen. We sit in his living room one afternoon, and he asks about my work. I tell him what I can, and he listens, nodding, asking follow-up questions. It's the conversation I wanted 20 years ago, and now that I have it, it feels bittersweet. Better late than never, maybe. Or maybe just a reminder that people can change, even if the change comes too late to undo the past. Mom asks to visit my current post, and I agree. She flies out, stays for a weekend, and I show her around. She meets some of my colleagues, sees where I work, watches me in my element. At dinner, she says, "You were right to choose this path." I see that now. I nod, accepting her words without needing them to erase the past. "I'm glad you see it," I say. She reaches across the table, takes my hand. "I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner." It's the closest she's come to an apology, and I squeeze her hand, letting her know I've heard her. The years continue to pass. I'm promoted to lieutenant colonel, then colonel. Each promotion is earned through hard work, strategic thinking, and leadership that inspires loyalty. My soldiers and subordinates respect me because I respect them, because I lead by example, because I never ask them to do anything I wouldn't do myself. This is the legacy I'm building, not just rank and titles, but a reputation for integrity and competence. Jonathan retires from the Navy with full honors, and I attend his ceremony. Marissa is there, of course, and we sit together, watching him receive accolades and commendations. Afterward, at the reception, he pulls me aside. "You've exceeded every expectation I had when we first met," he says. "You're one of the finest officers I've had the privilege of working with." I thank him, moved by his words. "You gave me opportunities one wouldn't have had otherwise," I say. He shakes his head. "I gave you chances to prove yourself. You did the rest." Marissa joins us, and for a moment, the three of us stand together. She looks at me, and there's no competition in her eyes, no resentment. Just acceptance. "I'm proud of you," she says simply. I smile. "I'm proud of you too. And I mean it. We've both built careers we can be proud of, both overcome obstacles, both earned our place. The difference is, I did it without her support, and that made me stronger. Eventually, I'm offered a position at the Pentagon, advising on joint operations and strategic planning. It's the culmination of decades of work, the kind of role that represents the pinnacle of a military career. I accept, knowing this is where I can have the most impact. My family is thrilled in their own way. Dad brags to relatives, Mom tells her friends, Marissa mentions it to colleagues. I let them have their pride, understanding now that their approval is separate from my worth. It's nice to have, but it's not essential. I think back to that day outside Fort Bragg, the day that changed everything. My family's mockery, Jonathan's salute, the moment I realized I didn't need their validation. It seems like a lifetime ago, and in many ways, it was. I'm not the same person I was then. I'm stronger, clearer, more grounded in who I am and what I've accomplished. The journey from dismissed daughter to respected officer wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Now, when I stand in front of junior officers and teach them about leadership, I tell them the truth. That respect is earned, not given. That your worth isn't determined by your family's approval or anyone else's perception. That the people who matter will see you for who you are, and the people who don't aren't worth your energy. I don't tell them my story, but I live the lessons I learned, and I hope they absorb them. My legacy isn't just the promotions and commendations, though those matter. It's the soldiers I've led, the officers I've mentored, the strategies I've helped develop. It's the knowledge that I served with honor, integrity, and competence. That I never compromised who I was to fit someone else's expectations. That I built a life I'm proud of, one choice at a time, one boundary at a time, one salute at a time. And when I retire, years from now, I know I'll look back on my career with satisfaction. Not because I proved my family wrong, though I did. Not because an admiral saluted me in front of them, though that was vindicating. But because I stayed true to myself, followed my path, and built something real. Something that mattered. Something that was entirely mine. That's the real victory. Not the moment of public validation, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've lived your life on your own terms. That's what I've earned, and that's what no one can take away. The call comes on a Tuesday morning, routine and unexpected all at once. Dad's had a stroke. Not fatal, but serious enough that Mom's voice shakes when she tells me. I'm at my desk in the Pentagon, surrounded by strategic reports and operational briefings, and suddenly none of it matters. I'm coming, I tell her, and I start making arrangements. The flight is long, and I spend it thinking about my father. The man who laughed at my uniform, who called my career pretend, who favored Marissa so obviously it became a family joke everyone pretended not to notice. But also the man who taught me to ride a bike, who stayed up late helping me with math homework even though he was exhausted from work, who used to call me his steady girl. People are complicated. Families are complicated. And anger, I've learned, can coexist with love. The hospital is sterile and cold, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Mom is in the waiting room, her face drawn and tired. She stands when she sees me, and I hug her, feeling how small she's become. Marissa arrives an hour later, still in her work clothes, looking as rattled as I've ever seen her. We sit together, not saying much, just waiting for news. When we're finally allowed in, Dad looks diminished in the hospital bed. Tubes and monitors, the steady beep of machines tracking his vitals. He's awake but groggy, his speech slightly slurred. He sees me in my uniform, I came straight from work, and something shifts in his expression. "Tessa," he says, and it comes out rough. I take his hand, careful of the four. "I'm here, Dad." He squeezes my hand weakly, and his eyes well up. "I'm sorry," he says. 2 words, decades late, but they land anyway. I don't know what to say, so I just squeeze back. Mom and Marissa hover nearby, and we all pretend not to notice the tears on Dad's face. The doctor comes in, explains the prognosis, the rehabilitation plan, the long road ahead. I listen carefully, asking questions, taking notes. When the doctor leaves, Mom looks at me. "Can you stay for a few days?" I nod. "I'll make it work." Those few days become a week. I coordinate with my team at the Pentagon, handle what I can remotely, delegate the rest. Marissa takes time off too, and we fall into a rhythm. Mom stays at the hospital during the day, Marissa handles logistics and insurance, and I manage the practical things: groceries, bills, making sure the house doesn't fall apart. We're not the family we were, but we're not the family we could have been either. We're something in between, doing our best. Dad improves slowly. His speech gets clearer, his strength returns in increments. One afternoon, I'm sitting with him while Mom and Marissa run errands. He's watching the news, some story about military operations overseas. He turns to me, and his eyes are clear. "I didn't understand what you did," he says. "I thought I did, but I didn't." I wait, letting him finish. "I thought the military was for people who couldn't do anything else. That's what my father thought, and I guess I just believed it." He pauses, struggling with the words. "But you could have done anything. And you chose this. That takes something I don't have." I'm quiet for a moment, processing. "It takes commitment," I say finally. "Same as any career." He nods. "Marissa's smart, and I'm proud of her. But you're strong. Different kind of strength." He looks at me, and I see regret there, heavy and real. "I wish I'd told you that sooner." I think about all the years I needed to hear it, all the times I defended myself and got nowhere. It would have helped, I admit. But I figured it out anyway. He smiles, sad but genuine. "You did. You figured it out without us." We sit in silence after that, comfortable for the first time in years. When Mom and Marissa return, I excuse myself, needing air. I walk the hospital grounds, thinking about forgiveness, about what we owe each other, about how people change when faced with their own mortality. Dad's apology doesn't erase the past, but it does something else. It closes a chapter. It lets me move forward without the weight of wondering if he'd ever understand. The week ends, and I have to return to Washington. Dad's stable, improving, and Mom has a care plan in place. Marissa promises to check in regularly, and I believe her. At the airport, saying goodbye, Mom hugs me tight. "Thank you for coming," she says. "Of course," I reply. "He's my father." She pulls back, looking at me. "You've become someone remarkable, Tessa." I see that now. I smile. "I've always been this person, Mom. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time." The flight back is lighter somehow. I think about the girl I was, desperate for approval, and the woman I've become, complete without it. Dad's apology mattered, but it didn't change who I am. It just acknowledged what was always true. I built a life, a career, a legacy. With or without their support, I did that. And now, finally, they see it. When I land, I go straight to the Pentagon. There's work waiting, strategies to develop, meetings to attend. I step back into my role seamlessly, focused and clear. A colleague stops me in the hallway. "Everything okay at home?" I nod. "It is now." She smiles and moves on, and I continue toward my office. This is my life, demanding, meaningful, full of purpose. And I've earned every moment of it. Later that night, in my apartment, I pour a glass of wine and sit by the window. The city lights stretch out below, endless and bright. I think about legacy, about what we leave behind. My father will recover, and our relationship will be different moving forward. Not perfect, but honest. Marissa and I will continue building our separate careers, respecting each other from a distance. Mom will try harder to understand, and I'll let her within boundaries. But my real legacy isn't about them. It's about the officers I've trained, the strategies I've crafted, the lives I've impacted through service. It's about standing firm when dismissed, setting boundaries when disrespected, and building something extraordinary on my own terms. The salute from an admiral was just a moment, a visible symbol of respect I'd already earned. The real story is quieter, longer, harder. It's about becoming the person you're meant to be, even when everyone around you says you're wrong. I finish my wine and head to bed, ready for tomorrow. There's always another mission, another challenge, another opportunity to prove that I chose right. Not to my family, but to myself. And that, I've learned, is the only approval that truly matters. I'm Captain Tessa Callahan. Thanks for listening. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with family, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been mocked or underestimated by your own family? What boundary did you set, and what happened after? Was there a single moment that flipped the power dynamic for you? If you're military or work in a high-stress field, how do you handle family who don't respect the job? What would you tell your younger self before that turning point? Drop your story in the comments. Someone reading it might need your courage today.